Managing the Shadows. Written and read by Alex Scofi. Chapter 1. Managing the Shadows. The white circle designs of the pot looked broken and disfigured as the black shards lay scattered on the floor. The pieces began to shake, then they started to lift, slowly. Treya's mind followed the jagged edges, sensing where the white circles were supposed to meet when the pot was whole. Treya tried to fill her mind with the sense of healing, a process her master had tried to describe to her numerous times before. In her mind, the edges of the pot glowed with the blue shine. In her mind's eye, she saw 4 hands molding and sculpting the black clay. She watched 3 hands hold a pot in place, while one more held a brush, painting on the white interlocking circles that surrounded the neck of the pot. She felt the joy of her master as the pot was handed to him as a gift. In each piece she felt love. In each piece she felt the image of another bond, the friend, the uncle, the father, the mother, the lover. But in each gap she felt pain, the pain of loss, the fear of death of those loved, the urge to end oneself, and in the pain she heard a whisper, "You are mine, mine, all mine." The floating pieces of the pot now scattered to the floor. Her long blonde hair, which had been floating around her, fell down around her shoulders as Treya got up and punched a wall. Cade opened the door. He had felt the frustration from outside. "It's no use, Master. I'm not strong enough," Treya shouted. Cade moved beside Treya, laying one strong and calm hand settling on her shoulders, and the other reaching up towards the pot. "It has nothing to do with your strength," Cade cautioned. The pieces of the pot began to shake. You must allow yourself to give in to the wish of the Force. Slowly the pieces of the pot arose, coming together and joining. The white rings all linked together now, making a chain around the neck of the pot. Calm. And once there, Cade launched his hand out of a fist to fingers outspread. The pieces of the pot flew across the room. One piece struck the wall hard enough to bury itself about an inch deep into the solid ceramic steel metal walls that made up the training room. Controlled power. Treya huffed. Cade couldn't help but smile. He knew the childish frustration too well. He may be a fair bit older than her now, but it was only recently in his life that he had calmed his own tempestuous nature. The pot is imbued with both light and dark side energy. The will of the light side force within the pot wishes to heal. However, the dark side force feeds on your desire to bend the will of the force to fix the pot. Yeah, I know. Treya began pacing. The pot was a Jedi training tool Cade had created to help youngling Jedi control their dark side urges and desires. The pot had both a desire to heal and shatter into pieces by sensing the type of force exerted upon it by a force side user. Only once one had truly surrendered themselves not to simply do, but to capitulate to the will of the Force, could an individual return the pot to its original form. Cade considered this to be one of his greatest achievements, something he was extremely proud of. Yet when he brought the item to the Jedi Council, it had been rejected as a tool for general training. It was never made completely clear why, but Cade had assumed it had something to do with the unorthodox means of creating the tool. It was rare, no, unheard of, for Jedi artifacts to require dark side energy in their creation. Treya stopped pacing and stared daggers at her master. "Master, I don't have time for these frivolous lessons. We know Nil, Lady Maldi, and Sarai are still at large. They are nowhere to be found even when our forces finally captured Korriban 6 years ago, and they still evade us even now." Cade was worried about Treya's obsession with the remnants of Crate's dark side leadership. It didn't help that she still refused traditional Jedi garb. She wore a black robe that fell just over her knees with a tight wrapping around the waist. Her legs had boots that came up to her knees. She barely revealed any skin, except between her sleeveless arms and her long leather gloves that revealed striking biceps. Treya cared little how others saw her. All that concerned her was that they knew her strength. "Trust the Jedi, Treya. This is why the Triumvirate have a fleet stationed on Korriban. We will keep a close eye on the Sith homeworld, making sure the Sith do not re-emerge there." "Trust the Jedi?" Treya laughed. "That's rich coming from you, Cade. And how many of these pots?" She gestured around the room to the pieces of the training pot, scattered. "Are there at the Jedi Temple again?" Cade tried to hide it, but Treya could sense his pain as soon as she finished her sentence. "Cade, I'm sorry, I didn't mean..." She trailed off. "I know, Treya, but this is what I'm trying to tell you about your anger. It will not only hurt you, but the ones you love as well." I know, I'm trying. I am, I swear." "I know you are, Treya." He walked to the door of the training room, hit the door control panel, and entered the main section of the ship. Treya ran after him. But seriously, Cade, what if the Sith have escaped from Korriban? Or better yet, what if they never return to Korriban? You've told me about your fears of what's going on in Zeost. The Sith know we watch over Korriban. Couldn't they just sabotage the Jedi from the shadows elsewhere in the galaxy, as they have always done? Cade paused. He had harbored these doubts as well himself, but he also knew how much of Treya's words weren't completely selfless. She wanted to find and hunt down the Sith, and after what they'd done to her, he couldn't blame her. But if anything, this made him even more sure of how vital it was that Treya learned to form a connection and bond with the light side of the Force, not just focus on her hatred of the Sith. He thought about his words carefully, but before he could come up with a response, Treya butted in. I've heard you talk with Morgan about the Sith on Zeost. Cade stopped walking and turned to raise an eyebrow. Have you been listening to my private comms with my mother? Your mother? Cade, she's a spy network unlike anything the galaxy's ever known. She's become a lot more than just your mother. I know you frequently discuss the state of the Sith. Cade folded his arms. Treya, you're not exactly helping your case here. She fidgeted as she came up with a response. Well, they're not personal comms most of the time, and if they are, I tune them out. Cade turned up the accusation in his voice. I don't hear a denial in there. It's less eavesdropping and more... Treya searched for the right words. Intelligence gathering. Yeah, intelligence gathering. Cade let out a raucous laugh. Fortunately or not, he saw a lot of himself in Treya, particularly at this stage of her life. He too had become quite skilled at making poor excuses for his even poorer decisions. He continued to head to the cockpit, knowing better than to argue with her when she was acting like this. Treya barreled onward after him. You know as well as I do that they are hiding and biding their time. The Sith flourish in the shadows. Although her voice was level, Cade could feel the anger rising inside her. You know as well as I do that it is there where they are most dangerous. Cade stopped walking. Treya almost bumped into him. Cade turned around, getting on one knee to get closer to the girl's height. He had a way with her to let her know when he was getting serious. She could feel this was one of those times. He put his hands gently but sternly on her shoulders, locking eyes. Treya, the truth is this. The Sith are making moves, as they always do. But even now, I can feel your motivations. Your interest in the Sith is not to save the galaxy. You want revenge. Believe me, if there is anyone who can understand that feeling, it is me. At this moment, he looked down, breaking eye contact. She saw something in his eyes, something that deeply upset her. It almost seemed sad, like a deep, deep sorrow. He shook his head and looked in her eyes, and when he did, it was gone. But I can tell you this from experience. Revenge is a poison. I know where you are right now. You are at that age where you have very little concern for yourself. He smiled in a way that made her feel like all her problems could melt away. But, his face grew stern, even if you don't have the desire to do it for yourself, anger is a path that will not just lead to harm to you, but pain for those around you. I know you don't wish to cause pain. We've seen it only moments ago. Here he released her. She almost tripped backwards from the power of the interaction. He stood up. You must master yourself before you are ready to fight the Sith. He turned around, ducking his head to enter the cockpit and take his seat at the helm. She darted in after him. If we don't bring the fight to them and crush them one by one, then the galaxy will never know peace. Kane turned away from the control panel and looked at Treya with a smile. Treya, the peace you seek is not for the galaxy. He began typing coordinates for their next hyperspace jump. Treya began to exit the room when Cade asked, Are you still hearing him? Treya froze. Sometimes when he asked this question, she would lie, but today she told the truth. All the time. Sometimes it's difficult to sleep. Again, she started to leave. I know what it can be like to have his voice in your head. Treya turned around and exploded. Don't even try, Cade. You don't hear his whispers, constant whispers. They are always commanding me to obey, to act, in his will, in his hate. Even now I have the furious desire to slay you where you stand. Are you sure how much of that is just Krait's desires? Treya huffed and turned away. Don't mock me. She hid her presence in the Force. It scared him when she did this. So much power at such a young age. I'm sorry, Treya. I didn't mean to mock. But you must understand, you cannot fight his voice with hate. I had a bond with Krait too. I was ready to kill myself to silence that voice. But what I realized in the end was, the door opened and Delia Blue walked in. What's with all the shouting going on in here? Blue shied with a smile. You two better not be arguing again. And if you are, she winked at Treya, You better be winning. What I was saying was, Cade pulled Blue over to sit in his lap as he gave her a wet kiss on the lips. Ew! Treya shouted and covered her eyes. Gross! Cade and Delia stopped kissing and locked eyes. Then Cade looked at Treya. What this one helped me realize, he continued, gesturing to Blue, was that the strength that the light side offered me, well, Crate could never compare to that. Blue hopped off Cade's lap and gave him a peck on the cheek. That's darn right. Listen here, Jedi. I ran diagnostics. The Minox hyperdrive is all set to go. Best mechanic in the whole galaxy, Cade shouted. You better believe it, Blue yelled back, taking her seat next to Cade. Cade turned back to the ship controls. Anything else, Treya? Treya paused, trying to take in what Cade was offering, but her mind was still awash with other thoughts. I hate this waiting, Cade. Cade looked over his shoulders from the controls. I know, kid. I know. Then Treya turned to Delia. Thanks, Blue. Blue looked over her shoulder, slightly confused. What did I do? I don't know. You just always know how to make me feel. Treya paused, looking for the right word. Better. Of course, Trey. I'm going to head to my quarters now. Okay, just be ready to head out when we get to Wayland. Only one hyperspace jump away now. Okay, Treya said cheerfully and began skipping to her room. She got to the doorway of her room before suddenly feeling weak.
Waiting, Treya.
There was a haunting voice cooing in her head.
I'll be back. Soon enough.
Treya began muttering to herself. No, Crate. I will rid the world of all of your followers. Nil, Maladai, Sarai. They will die at my hand. And when they are all dead, let's see you try to control me then. You okay, Treya? Blue yelled from the cockpit. It sounded like you fell. No, I just tripped is all. Okay, well, just be more careful. Of course, Blue. Treya muttered under her breath. We'll finish this later, Crate. A shiver ran down her spine as a laugh echoed through her mind.
Of course, young apprentice. We will most definitely continue this later.
Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed Chapter 1. Chapter 2 recording will be out shortly, so please like the video and subscribe to keep updated for more. You can also find the written work of Managing the Shadows at TheFanzineWriter.com.